and I want to welcome you to another episode of Beyond the Surface Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Wanda J. Evans-Brewer, and this time we have a special show. I wanted to focus on the Human Resource Department. I have a special guest. Her name is LaSalle Crosby. Could you say hello, LaSalle?
Hello.
And we're going to discuss background check. There's a lot of discussion around Title VII and whether or not the criminal background check is discriminatory, particularly against black males. And I know you've been in human resources for how long?
For 15 years.
Oh, 15 years. So you definitely know Title VII and the issues centered around the background check.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's get started. I mean, this is a vital time. We're coming out of a double-dip recession. We're also looking at whether or not there's a huge recidivism rate among black males. We want them to work, and we also want you to be able to move onward and upward. What's your response to the concept that maybe the criminal background checks are discriminatory?
You know, what I've seen, especially in the beginning of my HR career, is companies would usually set a standard. They would usually set really strict protocol as to how they were going to deal with applicants that had criminal backgrounds.
Okay.
And then I want to say over the last couple of years, maybe within the last 3 years, for instance, the last company that I worked for, the protocol was just kind of all over the place. Different states were doing different things.
Okay.
And so, you know, and that's always suspect, because all it takes is for one knowledgeable applicant to understand, you know, their rights as it relates to that, and to file suit, you know, against an organization. And I believe that's why the EEOC, within the first quarter of last year, was talking about changing, you know, doing something to change how organizations are choosing how their hiring practices. So
what they're looking at is, so what you're saying is EEOC is aware that some of what you experienced is in the last 3 years is happening more often.
Absolutely.
And as a response to that, they're asking companies to establish some kind of procedures?
Absolutely, because the lawsuits have been increasing. And so the EEOC, you know, basically was saying in a nutshell, well, okay, well, we need to, you know, put something in place to make the playing field level for these applicants to be able to be chosen.
Okay, what do you mean when you say losses? What do you mean when you say losses?
When I say who?
Losses.
When I say losses?
Losses. You said the losses had been.
Oh, the losses. Right. The lawsuits, because applicants were. Oh,
lawsuits.
Right, lawsuits. Applicants were filing lawsuits with the EEOC because they felt like they were being discriminated against based on their criminal history. They seem to feel like, you know, that's why they weren't being chosen based on their criminal history.
Okay, so there has been some companies that have functioned with basic blanket exclusion of folks who had any kind of contact with the criminal justice system. Is that true or not?
No, that's not necessarily true.
Okay.
Usually, and this is for most companies, there's certain criteria of a criminal background that a company is just not going to, they're going to automatically exclude. And rightfully so. So someone with an aggravated battery charge, you know, the company has the discretion to choose or not choose that applicant.
Right.
You know, versus an applicant with a DUI charge. A DUI charge is really not going to affect, can this person come in and do the job? But someone with an aggravated battery charge, well, that's a behavioral issue. That's you know, that's violent, And
they might be volatile. Right.
Absolutely. No one wants to take a chance with someone with a background like that. I'll say that in two parts.
Okay.
If they do take a chance with someone with that background, usually if it happened over maybe 10, 15 years ago, it's really going to depend on the applicant. I've seen in my history of HR where, you had someone at 17 that had an issue, but even though this person is 40, if you're only running a background check that should go back, most companies usually go back between 7 and 10 years. Most private companies will. Your state agencies and different jobs of those natures will go back your entire, they'll just go back entirely and just see what comes up. Okay. So for most private industries, usually if something comes up that was 10 years ago and it was that charge, if it just depends on where the person is and how articulate they are. If they're able to speak to it and show, this happened when I was 17. I'm a changed person. I've been able to hold, jobs for the last 20 years of my life.
Right.
I was laid off on the last 2 jobs. So if they're able to speak to and show that was then and this is now, then a company would take a chance. But
let me ask this, because one of the things that that even the commission set out and warned employers about was not just using arrest records at all to make hiring decisions. In other words, like they're looking to sort of figure out a way to be more holistic in their approach to clients, only because just because you was arrested don't mean there was a conviction. Do you see a difference between arrest records, using arrest records versus conviction?
No company should be using an arrest record. That you should not, usually in a background check, it's just going to show that you may have been arrested, but most and companies should not be using that at all. They should not be looking at that. What they should be looking at is they'll show an arrest. They'll show an arrest on the background check. Then it will show the court date. Then it'll show when the person went to court and what happened at that court date, if it was disposition or not. That's really, as an HR professional, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the beginning. Okay, what happened? Okay, you got arrested. Okay, you went to court. Okay, and here's what the judge said. And it's either going to be a conviction or it's not. And if it is a conviction, then I decide, or the hiring manager or the person above me, which is usually a higher HR professional, will decide if this is something that this organization can live with in hiring this person.
Okay. Then why has that bubbled up as an issue? If arrest records shouldn't be used in hiring practices, is there some presumption that employers are doing that, or have companies gotten away with doing that?
Companies have gotten away with doing it, Dr. Brewer, because people just don't know their rights. People don't understand, and it's surprisingly when I have to talk to candidates after a background check has come back and they haven't disclosed, and then I usually go through their background with them. A lot of them don't even understand that this was a conviction, that you now have a misdemeanor. They don't even understand that, because whoever their court-appointed attorney or whoever their legal representative was didn't share that with them.
Oh, they didn't actually walk through to show them what's the arrest, what's the conviction.
No, absolutely. So companies are getting away with it because our people don't know their rights.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, there was talk about ban the box. I know that Illinois looked at it, Hawaii looked at it. What are your thoughts about ban the box? And,
you mean
the whole idea of employers basically delaying, asking criminal background questions, but delaying it further in the hiring process, that box doesn't even have to be dealt with initially? Still get to ask the questions, but they wanted to come later in the hiring process.
You know what? That's funny because the last company that I worked for, we were asking the question during the phone screen. And then when this when the EEOC came out and said, you know what, we've got some issues going on with how the hiring practices is going. So until we, determine what the end result is going to be, we think you should stop asking that during the phone screen. So This was first quarter of last year. We stopped asking the question on our phone screen, have you ever been convicted of a criminal? And so what we did,
just hearing that is overwhelming because if I am a
But wait a minute, let me finish before you start. So while we're not asking the question on a phone screen, we put it on the application, and that's what we refer to. So if an applicant where we say, have you been convicted of a criminal, and then it also lists, just because you have a record doesn't mean this will disbar you from employment with us, and it has all that verbiage in there too. Mm-hmm. That's what we're to go to. So this is where we're trying to put the onus more on the applicant. Whereas before, the employer was like, okay, we're going to put it on the application, and then we're going to double-check it in the phone screen. Well, the EEOC has said you don't need to do that. We don't want you to do a double-check. You're going to rely on them to disclose that on the application, and you go forth with that, and then you take your chances. You take your chances on whether the applicant discloses or not discloses.
Well, I mean, I guess some of the reason I wanted to have this interview with you was because, I read some of the information from the U.S. Census Bureau, and one of the things that we were saying was that basically blacks, and Latinos are more likely to have arrest records than whites, and then even when they've disclosed, are more likely to have them used against them, and that there was sort of just it almost just kind of decriminalizes the individual, takes low-income communities and sets them further back. Because, the goal is always, if we can, get them out of jail and have them be productive, that they, they should be able to press past the stigma if that's the goal, if that's what they want for their life. So, just hearing that is kind of, it's just kind of disheartening. Like, what efforts are employers doing to reduce recidivism and support low-income communities, which disproportionately absorb ex-felons?
I think it just depends on the organization and how they want to, have their businesses be upheld. It also depends on, if they like being in court and paying out large sums of money in EEOC lawsuits. It's a number of factors of what it depends on, but not to discourage, people that have background checks. There are, that have criminal backgrounds. There are some companies that follow the letter of the law that will make exceptions. There's some great companies out here that will do that, but it really depends on the candidate. You have no idea, these candidates that get out of jail that just figure that, and their attitude is just, I don't know how to describe it, but they have the attitude of where, okay, I've paid my debt to society. Now you need to hire me, because I know I
you're saying that they feel entitled.
Exactly. So it's all about presentation and how you talk to the person, that has what you want. And I can say I've talked to various, all walks of life. And I've talked to candidates where, if I didn't, and it's usually my call. It's usually my call. If I feel based on, what I'm hearing, what you're saying, I have to present you to a hiring manager. And so if I don't feel, based on the conversation that I'm having with you, that, your overall fit is going to be conducive for the job, then I have the right to, you know, to end the conversation and wish you good luck based on that.
Well,